Right, welcome back to the channel, and you join me, as you can see, on Slad Lane. Look at that beautiful view. Quintessentially English black and white cottage over there. Fantastic. But anyway, we're going to go a special little trip today. We jump on the CL. We're going to go in a slightly different direction. Normally we go down there, but we're not today. We're going to go along this way. Along more main roads than usual, but also we're going to cut across into a beautiful little lane in a moment through the woods, which is particularly nice little stretch that I don't usually take you along. And you may have noticed there's something in the sky today. Just look at that sun. Yeah. Yes, it's incredible. The weather's changed and the whole feel has really changed, and we've got some glorious sunshine, and we're on a very, very special trip today. Free tea. Yeah, no, I'm not kidding. Free tea. And I'm also going to talk to you about my favourite motorcycles. Yes, indeed, my favourite motorcycles, both ones I've owned and ones that I haven't, and I would have liked to have. But the reason for today's trip, it's a bit special. We're going to the cafe eventually, but we're going in a different direction, or a different route. And it's Lee's birthday today. Lee is the chap who owns the lovely Z900 RS Kawasaki. The one in the only colour that you can have one of those bikes in. The dark metallic green. Beautiful. So it's his birthday today, and we've got a little tradition. If you're not from the UK, so most of you are, but many of you are not, we've got a thing where the person whose birthday it is brings cakes in or buys drinks, and I don't quite understand that. It's never really made a lot of sense to me. If it's your birthday, aren't you supposed to have things bought for you? Yeah, but hey, that's the way it works, and I'm not arguing with it. He's going to buy us all tea today. How great is that? So at the moment we're on the Kidderminster to Wolverhampton road, and we're going to turn off this in just a moment along a lovely little lane. Goes through another part of the forest. We're going to go through an area called Stourton, or Stourton, depending on how you pronounce it. There's a lot of argument about how you pronounce that. It's just up here. And there we are, into Staffordshire. Great road this. Not really one that the CL is maybe made for. Perfectly happy along it. Probably not one that it's absolutely made for, but still really enjoyable. And we're just coming into Stourton right now. I'm going to pronounce it in every way I can imagine, just to please everybody. And we're going to take the Bridge North Road there on the 0458. Yeah, so this is the beginning of the road I was talking about. It goes into a nice little lane here. We're just going around the outskirts of Kimber. And I was going to talk today about bikes. So people have been asking me what sort of I was chatting yesterday actually with somebody who was saying what sort of your favourite bikes, and I've had loads and loads of bikes over the years, and it's difficult to pick a favourite really, isn't it? Because some are just favourite at that particular time and then you move on. I've got to say one of the best bikes I ever owned, I have to say, is an all-round bike. There's got to be the Tiger 800 that I had. It's sort of a do-it-all bike. It would do everything. You could have real fun on it. It handled fantastically well. It was quick, but it was also immensely practical and hard to. If you had to have just one bike, that type of bike really is probably the one to have. It gave you the thrill of that triple engine. It was surprisingly quick. You could keep up with anybody on it really. A good rider could. I don't know if I could, but a good rider certainly could. And it was a brilliant bike. And I do know when I had mine, there was another chap that had one, and he was a police motorcyclist, and he chose the Tiger 800 as his private bike, and he just said it's a brilliant bike, and that man could ride. I mean, I did go on a ride with him once, and he was absolutely phenomenal. Oh, look, the Jiminy KTM. Yeah, some beautiful, beautiful countryside out here. So I would say the Tiger 800 is probably the best all-round bike I've ever owned. My favourite? It's so hard. They've all been favourites at one time or another at that particular time. This bend goes on forever and it's exceedingly bumpy. Least favourite that I've owned, if you had to actually had to pin me down, I've not disliked any of the bikes I've owned really, but I think it would be I had a Yamaha MT-03. Now we're not talking about the current MT-03 that's pinched its name. This is the original MT-03 with the 660 single engine in it, and it was what it was. But in a similar way to what I was talking about before about the 1200 Bonneville, the engine was extremely lumpy. Now, of course, it would be. It's a 660 single, but it didn't make the bike the most pleasant thing to ride, to be honest. With very quirky styling that appealed to me at the time. And it was certainly ahead of its time in its styling. It was a sort of a urban scrambler type of look. But I think if there's a bike that I'd probably least want to own again, it would be that one. Let's put it like that. And then we get on to another subject, which is my favourite bikes of all time design wise. The best looking bike that has ever been, that type of story. Well, most people all say the same thing, don't they? They're probably one of the Ducati sports bikes. In terms of sports bikes, that beauty, that type of beauty, that faired look, I think I'd go for the MV Agusta F4, which I think was absolutely stunning. Beautiful bike. But in terms of my favourite probably looking bike of all time, because I like this style of bike that I'm on now, the CL, I like the sit-up. I think there's one that stands out. It's one that, in my opinion, was began a whole style of bikes, and that's the insect looking bikes that we're so familiar with now. KTMs are very much into them, and right up to the new Honda Hornet, that type of style. There's one bike that began all that, and that was the MV Agusta Brutale 750. That's the original Brutale from 19, that shows my age, from 2004. It wasn't from 1904. Yeah, 2004, the original Brutale, which actually had a 4-cylinder engine, not the triple that they have now. And that bike, in my opinion, was utterly stunning, and you have to put it in context of its time. It was way ahead of its time. Yeah, it was the beginning of that insect look, in my opinion, and I don't think it's ever been bettered. It was an absolutely stunning bike. It had the wheels, the alloys that were star-shaped, and the whole thing it was just an absolute thing of beauty. And back in its day, back in 2004, you've got to think that this was before all the other insect style bikes were around. This thing was just awe-inspiring when you saw it. It was just stunning, and strangely enough, it was actually a stripped down F4 sports bike, basically based on that. I think the frame was exactly the same. But for me, yeah, the original Brutale was the most beautiful bike that has ever been. It would be on my wall if I was wealthy and I did that thing where you bolted a bike to the wall in your house. I don't know if you've seen that, but that is a thing. It would be an original Brutale. I think it was a work of art. Now the thing is with that, and it's interesting in design terms, because it's my contention, you might disagree with me, that often design reaches a peak, and it's often very early on within that particular style. And I think the Brutale has never been bettered. I think all the bikes that have followed it just don't look as good. Even to this day, side by side, I don't think they look as good. I think when the designers are bringing out a new style of bike and they're going to hit the market with it, they throw everything into perfecting this creation, like the Brutale was. And then, of course, a year later, 2 years later, the bosses come around and say, right, well, that one's getting a bit tired now and you need to improve it. And they look at them and say, improve it? You can't improve on perfection. They say, well, you're going to have to. Because, of course, that's the market, isn't it? So they fiddle. And they change it slightly, and they move something, and they give it a new colour, and it's never, in my opinion, 99.9% of the time, it's never actually better. You may disagree with me there. You may think that they improve. But I honestly don't think they do. And I think that is often the case. I think some of the most beautiful Ducatis, for instance, sports bikes, are not the ones that came along more recently. It's the originals that look the best and still look the best. And in terms of the modern motorcycle, the one I would call the insect, typified now by the Hornet and the Suzuki GXS 8S, I think that design was perfected in 2004, almost 20 years ago, and has since never ever been bettered, with a magnificent Brutale 750. So So there you go, I'll throw that out there. You might disagree, I'm sure a lot of people will, and say, what are you talking about? The MT-07 is the ultimately beautiful looking insect bike. All I would say to that is, I don't agree. In fact, I think, I don't want to upset anybody who's got an MT-07, but I just immediately, the minute I saw one of those, I just thought, what is going on with that design? What is going on? But that's me. We're all different, and it's a wonderful bike, and I know it is a brilliant bike, but design-wise, standing next to a Brutale that was designed a full decade before, and tell me that the MT-07 looks better than the Brutale with a straight face, I don't think you could. I don't think even the most Yamaha MT obsessed person could actually admit to that. But that's my opinion. It's all about opinions, isn't it? So that's my shout for the most beautiful bike of all time. And I'm not going to go down the lane of finding the ugliest, or I mean, there's lots and lots of those. I remember back in the day when I was a young man, and I had Suzuki GTs, the 250s and the 380s. It was that sort of time, late 70s. The one bike that stood out then has been phenomenally, well, ugly is probably a wrong word, but I don't want to use it as a derogatory term, but unique. And that is the MZs. I mean, the size of the tank compared to the seat, and the whole thing just seemed to be so bizarrely out of proportion. So that would be up there. But it's strange, because now looking back at when I see an MZ now, I just think, oh, look at that, that's great, isn't it? But at the time, it really was the most bizarre looking bike. Almost like it was designed to intentionally offend the eye. Which I'm sure it wasn't. Anyway, as you can probably tell, we're coming up to Dudmaster Hall now, so the cafe's just down the road. I don't know if Lee's there yet, buying the teas. He said he's going to buy some cake as well. Well, he may not have said he's buying some cake, to be honest. I'll see. But that's some of my favourite bikes. I will have a long think about this, and think about others that I like the look of. Of course, there's the retro type bike as well. And what's the best looking retro? That's a hard one, isn't it? Because the retro look, if you're going by the look, let's just call it the Bonneville look. There's a few bikes in that. Obviously the Interceptor from Royal Enfield. There's the W800, previously W650 from Kawasaki. And there's the Bonneville. Which ones of those is the best looking is a matter of contention. I think, to be honest, the Bonnevilles are, even though the engine on the Kawasaki is very original looking. I know that. But there we are, the sun's out, it's a glorious, glorious day. I might even record on the way home. I may or may not show some bikes that are at the cafe. I bet there's a few there today. I'm a bit early. They're yet to arrive. that's all from me. Here again. I'll see you in the next one. Thanks. See you soon.